Hi, folks. I'm Jimmy Hiles.
I'm Lydia Judy.
I'm Derek Master.
And this is Green Bloody Movies, the podcast where we review a horror movie each week. Go over the horror news and we sing our intros.
We should actually start one time as a rock band.
Yeah, I'll have you as the vocalist, Derek.
We can put some long wigs on and have our intros be like, "Dude," and it will zoom in.
Lydia, you play bass. I'll play guitar. And then Derek will be the vocalist.
All right.
I'm going to scare some people, but okay.
He will sing it with the British accent, so it'll be even better.
Oh, I can do that. I've got an excellent British accent. Excellent.
Hello, Governor.
Would you like
How
some
are you guys
biscuit?
doing tonight?
Doing
Biscuits.
good.
Good.
Had a long weekend, so
Yep, same.
not long enough, but
Yeah. I mean, my weekend was a regular length one, but I had a lot of stuff happen during it. So, how about you guys? You doing good, Derek?
Yeah, I got to drive to Kentucky.
Mm,
And then
it's always good.
I ate some ribs tonight, so
nice.
it was pretty good.
I had
It
some
is pretty
salmon
good.
tonight. My exciting thing was starting my Halloween shopping this
Ooh,
weekend.
yeah. You never
That's
can do that too early.
An
Yes.
A+, Lydia, A+.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
happy. So happy about it.
Yeah, I did not eat any good. I ate spaghetti from a restaurant today, and it was all right. It was all right.
Always?
No. It's another restaurant. It was Olive Garden. I mean, it was Olive Garden, but my wife went there and she brought me some leftover
Aw.
or some to go, the to go ones. So it was all
You
right.
know-
It was good.
Clark and Quincy went on a date today.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, they brought me back part of a kitchen sink cookie from Panera Bread.
I thought you were just gonna say they brought you back part of a kitchen sink. I was like, what the hell were they doing? Were they at Lowe's? I don't understand.
And my wife
Come
was
on,
like,
son. Let's go to Lowe's.
it's kind of funny because my wife was like, it was terrible. I was like, okay, what happened? So
That is great.
I know.
That's kind of what I say whenever I go out with anybody.
It's
So,
terrible.
guys, we have a lot to talk about today because today we are talking about a legit cultural phenomenon that happened at one point. But before we get into that, and a big announcement at the end of this episode, let's do the horror news. Because, guys, I found a decent amount. And some of them are going to make you angry. And some of them are going to make you happy. And some you're just going to kind of be like, Let's start with this one here. We have posters for the new Exorcist movie.
Oh.
So the trailer for the Exorcist movie is currently playing in front of Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, which came out at the time of this recording, came out this weekend. So that will, once that's available, we review it as well. But here are the posters if you guys want to see them. Here's the first one.
Oh.
Here's the second one.
Oh.
And here is the third one.
Oh. Oh, okay. Huh.
What are you guys' thoughts?
Are there two of them?
I don't know. I think the one is just a mashup of the other two together, it kind of looks like.
Huh.
All right, so here's the thing. I'm going to be honest with you guys, okay?
Yeah.
I have a low expectation for this movie just based on what we've covered so far. So I am ready for it to blow my socks off. But if it doesn't, I won't be disappointed.
What do you think, Lydia?
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate those pictures.
I think the posters are
They look
pretty
good.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the posters look pretty good. They give the flavor of The Exorcist at least, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
They feel very exorcisty. But then again, the poster for Halloween Ends slap too, unlike the film. So you never can judge a book by its cover, right?
I mean, I liked it.
Yeah, I did not at all. But you are right to be skeptical, Derek, because this movie did have a million reshoots. It seems like.
You know, if you followed it, the messaging in this was just kind of terrible because at one point they're like close to wrapping up, and then you're like, well, they just cast somebody major.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait a second, something's not adding up here.
Yeah. How do you cast a major character with 2 minutes left in the movie?
Well,
Yeah.
that's what makes me curious of like why there's two girls in that image.
Yeah.
Like maybe they did cast someone like last second that was like they just only needed her for like the end or something, you know,
Maybe.
or the
Maybe.
beginning. I mean, who knows?
It's interesting. We'll have to wait and see. Lydia, this next bit of news is for you. It's another little action figure. You know how I like showing you guys these NECA toys, right? But Lydia, this NECA toy is for you.
Oh,
Look at that.
beautiful.
That's legitimately cool.
Look at the
Count.
buttons.
Orlock. Isn't that amazing?
That is awesome.
And then we also have the man in the beaver hat from London After Midnight.
Creepy.
And it looks like the Phantom as well, right here.
Mm-hmm.
That is cool, right? What do you guys think of those? Those look great, right?
They do look
Yes.
awesome.
The Count Orlock especially looks amazing.
I know what you two can get me for Christmas. That's all I'm going to say.
That would be a good gift, actually. Could be a good one. Now, lastly, Lydia, remember at the beginning when I said, hey, some of this might make you guys upset. We don't know anything yet. It might not make you upset, but we kind of talked about this a little bit. We have the first images from Pet Cemetery Bloodlines,
Oh, no.
the prequel to Pet
Okay.
Cemetery. Remember this? We talked about this?
Yes.
So this is the prequel to the original.
Correct. Not to the, one that shall not be named. But, first of all, there's our first image. Okay.
Okay.
It follows, the synopsis follows a Judd Crandall in 1969. So, which tells me that it might be a prequel to the remake, to be honest. But here's Judd. Shit. Hang on. Oh, messed up. There it is. Jackson White plays Judd, a young Judd Crandall.
Okay.
Henry Thomas is in it.
Love it.
Here are these two characters. I don't know much about them, but they're in it, apparently.
Beautiful.
There's a wolf.
I
Probably
mean,
Judd's dog.
That's a cattle dog,
Mhm.
it looks like. But
Yeah,
that's
probably Judd's dog that goes bad, I'm going to guess, right?
yeah.
Yep.
And there's David Duchovny.
Shut
He's in
the
it.
front door.
So why are we going to be mad about any of this?
Just because we were talking about this.
I'm
And
not mad about anything right now.
Yeah.
there looks like that looks like the old boy that comes back from the dead, right?
Yeah.
That's probably David Duchovny probably plays his dad, is what I'm going to guess.
Yeah.
There is the Pet Cemetery.
See, that looks a lot like the Pet Cemetery, if I remember correctly, from the remake.
Yeah,
Maybe I
well,
have to relook at it. Maybe
It's
been
got a
while.
style.
it's got a style of both combined, but I think that it might be from the remake because if we follow the timeline, 1969, Judd's in his 20s. In 1988, he would, that was in the 40s in the original movie, right? The 30s and 40s when we get the flashback.
I think you're
So
right.
this has to be a remake or in the remake timeline.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of terrible because Nobody wants to be associated with that, or it's just its own timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know how well the other one was received. I know we reviewed it and we didn't give it high marks, but
It did not get well received by most people.
since it's a prequel, I mean, it has the ability to kind of reset everything if they do it right.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
I'm actually excited.
I'm optimistic.
All that looked really cool.
Oh, damn. Sorry.
I mean, it does have David Duchovny in it randomly.
Yes. I love him.
Yeah, he's pretty great. So yeah, I saw it. I was actually also impressed with it. But I know that if it was a sequel or a remake or a prequel to the remake, that we don't love that because we did not enjoy that whatsoever.
Maybe this could be one of those, once that surprises you. You're like, okay.
Maybe I'm not mad
They
at
fixed
anything.
it.
I think it looks good.
I mean, how do you make a movie and then hear everyone's opinion on it and then do that again? There's no way.
Rob Zombie heard people's opinion of Halloween and then made Halloween. He's like, you know what? I'll do that except worse, and made Halloween 2. So you never know.
Okay.
His motto was, what could happen?
I think maybe he's, an exception, hopefully. But
Yeah. One would hope. But that wraps up this week's edition of the Horror News. So, guys, tonight we're going to talk about a movie that was a legit cultural phenomenon. In 1999's, by the way,
Yeah.
Blair Witch Project. And what's crazy is I remember when this came out and was like a sentient human being at that point, having my own thoughts and tastes being developed. So that's really sad to me that I'm that old. Derek, you told your story last week about seeing this for the first time. Do you want to just give us a little recap?
Sure. So I would have been 16 at the time, and a friend of ours, Joey, and I went to the movies. So he lived about 4 or 5 blocks away from the movie theater, so we walked. And so when we walked down there, it was like 7 o'clock. It was still light outside. When the movie got over, we had to walk back home, and it was pitch dark. And so it was pretty creepy. What's actually, last night when I was watching this movie, I was watching it downstairs. I had to go upstairs, and I ran up the stairs. And my wife, when I got up to our bedroom, she was like, "Were you running downstairs?" And I was like, "I was watching a scary movie. Okay, I had to run up the stairs." And she laughed hard at me, but yeah, it definitely set us on edge.
Lydia, you've seen this before, yeah?
yes, I've seen this before. Actually, what's funny is that this weekend, one of my projects was to go to my mom's house and clean out some of my old boxes from high school out of her basement that I was using as a storage. And I found not 1, but 2 VHS tapes of the Blair Witch Project.
Nice! Finding VHS is where it's at.
Sadly, I don't have a VCR anymore, and I really, really need to get one because now I have all of these VHS horror movies that how badly I wish I could have watched it tonight on the VHS. Would have been awesome.
When was the first time you saw this?
I saw this
before you answer that, if you did watch it on VHS, it would not mess with the quality of this film whatsoever.
Yeah, it adds to it,
Yeah. When was the first time you saw this one?
I think I really can't say. I was not too young, not too old. I mean, I was 6 when this came out, and I definitely didn't see it that young. But
I was gonna ask how old you were.
Yeah, around then. But I think I saw this maybe like middle school, maybe early high school, kind of. I'd always heard about it. It's one of those things that was always, it's like such a common knowledge thing, even to like children in that era, you know. I don't know about anymore, but in the 90s it was like, it was a big deal. So even though, you know, me and my cousins had not seen this movie, we still talked about it and knew that it was the scariest thing imaginable when we were walking in exploring in the woods, you know.
Oh my god.
Which is like most of what we did as kids.
It's what we always did. We have some stories about that. My first time seeing this actually was on VHS. I didn't get to go see this in the movie theater. So I saw it on VHS. And what I remember specifically about it is the movie was fine. It's kind of how I've always felt about the movie. I've always been on the it's fine camp. Spoiler alert. But the hype around it was real. So I remember the build up, and I remember watching you guys. This is going to be a blast from your past. Do you guys remember watching the Sci-Fi Channel mockumentary, The Curse of the Blair Witch?
No.
It came out around the same time, and it was basically bits of like a lot of it was stuff that was cut from the movie that was like interviewers talking, you know, them talking to the people interviewing.
I do remember
about it like it's a real thing.
Yeah.
You remember this?
I do. I vaguely remember this. Yeah.
So I remember watching that and being like, "Ooh, hype!" Like, "Oh man!" And then we went over to we're at my friend Justin's grandparents' house because they were. I think his parents were house sitting for them. So we were over there, and they kind of live in kind of a secluded area. There's some woods behind them on the side of them. And we watched the movie, and I was like, well, you know, it's okay. And then afterwards, it was like, oh my God, guys, you need to come here quick. And we went outside, and Lori and Greg and my mom had made little stick figures and hung them up in the trees, to try to spook us out. And my brother and Justin were younger than me, so they were like, oh. And I was just like, really, guys? But I remember it very vividly, like, ooh.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I've seen it several times since then. I remember, Derek, I don't know if you remember this, but there was one night shortly after it came out that you, me, and Joey watched this over at his house. It was like in the early 2000s. Well, probably around 2005. So it had been out for a while, but 2005 or so. During our summer, you, Joey, and I watched this at his house. We also watched Transformers that night. So probably 2007, actually. We watched Transformers, and then we watched Blair Witch. And again, I was like, that's fine. And here we are today to talk about this thing. So, guys, I don't know how we're going to talk about this because really it's three people in the woods with a camera literally walking around in circles for an hour and a half.
You know,
how do you want to break this down?
We should set the scene for this movie. So, 1999. This was, for most people, pre-internet. If you had internet, it was dial-up. And good luck loading any type of like videos or, you know, even large.
It would take you forever to load a video or even to download a song back then. You remember when you had to download a song?
It took an entire night to download one song that was probably like, you know, 4 megabytes.
Yeah, and 4 minutes long or something like that. Yeah.
So this was pre-social media. This was I looked it up. IMDb was out, but like you didn't know to go to IMDb. No. You know, so like the cloud that was around this movie, it worked so well because of when it came out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right because it was the hype around the movie. It was the marketing. The marketing of this movie was genius because if you remember, the trailers were just 3 film students. 3 amateur filmmakers decided to shoot a documentary in the woods about the Blair Witch, and it would intercut like some interviews, and then it's like they ended up missing and show their pictures, and then it's like this is the footage that was found of them.
Yeah.
And then it showed like little snippets of them walking around in the woods. And then, the Blair Witch Project. And it always showed the shot of her with the one that's been parodied a million times. I'm so scared. It always showed just a snippet of that. And then it just piqued your interest. You're like, I remember people thinking that this was real. Do you remember that, Derek?
Yeah, and that's more or less where I was going with that. It would have been easy to like feed into that hysteria because you couldn't really prove that it wasn't. You know what I mean? Like it was a product of the time for sure.
Yeah, I definitely thought it was real. I remember finding out that it wasn't real and being like, "Nuh-uh."
Yeah, like I knew I think that's probably why it never quite landed for me as far as horror is concerned, because I always knew it wasn't real, like from the pretty early. More just kind of logic. I was like, that would be like a snuff film. Yeah, that'd be like a snuff film. There's no way that they're releasing this movie theatrically of these people just missing or being murdered. We'd hear about this case at some point, right? Well, so logic started taking over, and then once you dug early on that early internet, you could easily find these are actors, but you actually had to research it.
Mm-hmm. What would have you used back then? Probably Internet Explorer. I was going to say like Netscape, but that.
Oh no, it was Internet Explorer for me.
Really old.
Yep.
But also, so not that I really fed into it, and it's hard to like think of your like mental space back then. But like one advantage I think you had is you're kind of a film connoisseur, right? So you had already like peeked behind the curtain of like. I don't even know what a snuff film is. I knew now, but like, then, it's like Faces of Death. You're like, oh my God, this stuff is so real. They're eating the monkey brains. But yeah, so.
Which people believed for like 20 years that Faces of Death was real. Yeah.
Dude, I didn't know it was fake until you told me.
Oh, yeah. So almost 40 years for you.
Mainly
like
because it wasn't in like the general like video area. The only way you could rent that was to go in the adult section.
Yeah, because it was so graphic.
Yeah.
And what really worked about it too is not only so it was easy to get on that hype train. Also, I think that I knew because I had seen Cannibal Holocaust.
Well,
which is the precursor to a degree of Blair Witch as far as the concept of a found footage horror movie. So I was kind of predispositioned, but that doesn't mean that it didn't, wasn't good and the hype didn't work, because it worked. I mean, when I first was hearing about it, I was like, oh man, it looks so scary. Look at this documentary. Oh no. And then, I was like, wait a second, something doesn't add up for me. But yeah, I mean, it worked like gangbusters.
So we gotta look this up. What was the return on this movie?
Oh, I've got it right here.
The budget had to be like $17,000.
So the budget was around $200,000 to $750,000, which is I'm kind of thinking, where did that budget go? That all go into post.
I wonder if that goes into either that or even like into the marketing, because like there's
probably, but I think the back half is for marketing. I think to make the movie was around $20,000. Yeah, because you have to remember back then they had to get 16 millimeter film as well as the camcorder, which the camcorder I read that they bought at Circuit City.
Yeah,
and filmed with it and then returned it, so they got money back from it. But they had to buy that from Circuit City, but the 16 millimeter camera was not cheap, and it ran on film. Mm-hmm. So the black and white shots are all in the 16 millimeter camera. But the budget was between $200,000 and $750,000, which now we can make this movie for $10 probably. Basically just pay I think a lot of it also went into paying cast and crew and feeding the actors, that sort of stuff. But like the box office for this movie made $248.6 million.
Holy cow.
So
Oh
they
my
made their
gosh.
money back, is what you're saying.
Just a little bit, yeah.
What a
Just-
jackpot.
Well, they were in the black from the beginning because they sold the movie rights. Like when it was bought at the film festival,
Mhm.
when the distribution was bought for this thing, it was bought for like $1.1 million. So they had already, you know what I mean? They had already
Insane.
made their budget back, right?
Yeah, I mean, and if it was that, so at that point, it's 5 times the amount. You
Mhm.
said this was 204. What was it?
What the millions?
Yeah.
$248 million. Almost 249 because it's 248.6. So basically $250 million they made on this movie at the box office. It was, like I said, a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah.
And it was made for peanuts, of course.
So that was a 1,240% return.
Yeah, that's a good multiplier, guys.
Yeah,
Good
that's
multiplier.
a budget of 200,000.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, this movie was huge. What's really interesting about this movie, and let's talk about the actual movie here, because how they made this is kind of fascinating. So the writers and directors, the directors wrote the movie too. I use the word wrote loosely. They wrote the scenario of the Blair Witch. They wrote the backstory of the Blair Witch. They wrote the mythology of the Blair Witch, and they created the scenarios that the actors were going to find themselves in. And what they would do is they would have drop sites that they'd have the actors go to, and there would be a package, basically, for lack of a better word, at each drop site that would have the directions for the scenes. It had like a 35-page outline. And then the directors would basically on a note say, this one's for Heather, this one's for Josh, this one's for Mike. They would read it and they'd get the scene. So basically, in this scene, we want you guys to do this. Like by the end of the scene, this kind of thing needs to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they'd create different scenes. They shot hours and hours of footage.
Yeah.
And they would just improvise. So the actors would just improvise their dialogue, kind of stay in character. They had a safe word. Taco was a safe word. If they needed to momentarily break character, if they needed to break character, the rule was everybody had to break character. So if they said taco, they would break character. They would all be out of character for however long they needed. Then they'd get back into the scene and they would be back into their roles. So how it would work is they would have to set up camp at the beginning. They'd have to pitch the tent. And then they'd sleep overnight. And so the scares overnight, like for instance, when they started shaking the tent earlier, or the early scare in the movie, like when the first attack happens,
Mm-hmm.
the actors weren't aware that was going to happen. The directors just showed up and started doing it. And they had to act in character. So they were literally surprised, and then they had to act in character. And then so they'd be like, okay, this needs to happen. Boom. Then at the next day, they would say, you need to walk in this direction for this thing. Here's our next drop point. Then the crew would come behind them. They'd tear up the tent. The crew would come behind them, take all of the stuff, and they would march it to the next drop site. So that way they didn't have to carry all that stuff while they're doing their filming throughout the day. So that's a wild way to make a movie.
That is
Whoa.
a very wild way.
Dude, that is so stressful for the actors. Like,
So
Yeah, but think about the atmosphere that cultivates between the characters.
yes. And especially since they had to try, the goal was for the directors not to interact with the actors except through these notes as much as possible. Now, every once in a while, it had to happen. Like, for instance, there was the bit where they were building the stone piles outside the tent. They heard them. The actors heard them. And before they could, so they were going to go out and check, and the crew had to, the director's Taco broke the scene, said, hey, we need you guys to stay in the tent. We're doing something out here. You'll see it in the morning and then react to it in the morning. Okay. So then they don't react to it. So then the next morning they come out, oh my God, look at this. And they do. And then there was also a time where an argument between the characters, the actors and character, was getting too heated. It wasn't working how they want. So the directors actually had to step in and say, okay, that's enough of this. This is how we need this to go. So they would have like bits that they knew were going to happen.
Yeah.
So for instance, a really cool story is we were supposed to see the Blair Witch in this movie from a distance. So the scene where they're running through the woods and she says, what the fuck is that over there?
Yeah.
And they're running. The actor, I think it was Josh or Mike, one of the two, were holding the camera. They were supposed to pan over when she said, what's that over there? And they were supposed to see her in white in the distance and then come back and run. But he forgot to pan over and they never reshot it. So they didn't get the shot. He didn't know that they didn't pan over.
I think it
Oh my
just kind of added to it.
I think it was for the better too. Yeah, I think it's probably for the best as well. But
if it was super hokey, it would have like ruined like the.
Well, it was supposed to be out of focus, and you just see like a figure in white, so it probably would have worked.
Fair enough.
So did they know that it was going to be there, and they were just like scared, like genuinely scared at the moment?
No, they knew because this was like a rehearsed shot because they could see him running. There was a crew member all dressed in white running with them, give them something to look at in an eye line. And then you're supposed to pan over to see it real fast. So it was a planned bit, but like they knew about it. It just didn't land. They didn't, get the shot like they wanted to.
Yeah. Wow. I can imagine like filming in the woods at night, obviously we can imagine that.
We have done it. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And it would be so easy to just like freak yourself out. Like, I feel like.
Absolutely.
That's like, and that's what is so cool to me about this movie is how genuine their like reactions always are, because they're actually out there. Like, that's insane.
Yeah, they were walking, so they would like set up. So apparently on the third day, they had a GPS so they had a walkie-talkie that they could speak to them in case of emergencies, and they had a GPS to lead them to the next drop location. Well, on the third day, they genuinely got lost, and they ended up out of the woods at a local person's house. So they made a phone call to the directors. The directors were like, okay, here's what's going to happen. They put them up in a hotel room. They had them get a nice meal and stuff, dry out. They dried out all the equipment. And then they reshot day 3. So they got lost 3 times.
Wow. Yeah.
In the woods.
Yeah.
Nowadays would be way easier because we have our smartphones. So they just drop a pin where they needed to, and they just follow it to the location. But
if you had a signal,
if you had a signal, which they did because they were just on the outskirts of town. Wasn't obviously they just walked to a person's house. It wasn't like,
right.
One of the things that I found myself doing when I was watching this movie is strategizing, like, okay, if I were in the scenario, how would I get out of this? Which is always it's a fun little exercise to do with a movie like this.
It is.
Found that damn stream and I would have followed it downstream. I wouldn't have.
Well, and that's the thing, you see. The supernatural keeps them from doing that because they walk in a single direction and end up right back where they.
Yeah.
Though one could argue that it just was them. It was the creature messing with the compass, I suppose, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could be messing with the compass and not actually. You know what I mean? Though, if you just keep walking straight, that's the real strategy, right? If you just keep walking straight, you're going to eventually get out of the woods.
Yeah.
Especially since it's not too big.
I was thinking like Naked and Afraid. Like, I'm like, okay, build a shelter, find food. Like, I'm like, come on, we don't know how long we're going to be in here. We're going to need energy. We're going to need shelter. We're going to need food.
Lydia, they did find shelter. They found a house.
Eventually, yeah. So here's what's interesting. It's always a hard thing for me with found footage movies. You guys know what I'm going to say.
Yeah. Why did they keep filming?
Right. And you have to just suspend disbelief, because if they didn't, then we wouldn't have a movie. What would we be watching, right?
Mhm.
And that's fine. But this one kind of strains credibility at certain points when she's just for no reason filming stuff that's clearly not going to be in the documentary, like them arguing and fighting. And you're like, but they have to, or else we wouldn't see it, right?
Mhm.
I actually
can
felt
see
like there was a scene in the movie where they kind of, for my opinion, they kind of like laid the foundation for those scenes, because
They
this is
kind
where-
of do. They kind
whenever
of give
they-
it a
yeah,
yeah.
because when he gave her, or when she gave up the camera, he was like, "Oh no, you're right. You know, it's kind of like you're not really here. It's like you're seeing everything through the camera, and it's
Well, he was more being a dick when he was saying that.
oh, I took it as like
Yeah,
like you know, you're kind of removing yourself from the situation that you're in, and it's more like you're like kind of channeling that through. That's how I took it. But you
Yeah,
could
no, I mean,
being a dick.
that's kind of, well, that's what the explanation is, but he's saying it to be a dick to her
Hmm.
because he's being a dick by that point, from that point on. And that's
Doesn't
why,
like,
he's like,
right?
you know, yeah, that's why he's like, what's your motivation? You know, we're making a movie. What's your motivation? Just being,
Oh, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
a
yeah, he's just a,
little later, but
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah,
he was
not the
totally
nicest.
being a dickhead right there.
Yeah. So, yeah, so some people can't watch this movie, and not because of fear. They just literally can't watch it due to,
Motion sickness.
yeah, because the camera work is pretty terrible in a lot of scenes.
And that's the way it's supposed to be, right?
Somewhat. A lot of it was because the actors didn't know how to use this, all the 16 millimeter stuff.
Mhm.
You didn't know how to use the focus.
Ah,
So that's why you get a lot of out of focus shots and stuff, is because they didn't know how to, they're actors using cameras. They're not cinematographers.
yeah. Well, there's a great bit at the beginning where he's like, "Yeah, I've only used this camera one time,"
Yeah.
because they
So,
checked
you
it
know,
out.
So in the beginning when they're doing the interviews with the townspeople,
Yeah.
there's one with the 16 millimeter, the black and white camera that's way out of focus when he's trying to talk to the person. That's
Mhm.
because the actor genuinely was terrible at pulling focus. He just couldn't do it. But let's talk about that, because we get to framing of these, because the plot is essentially they're making a documentary on this Blair Witch legend, and so they go to the town of Burkittsville to, talk to the townspeople about the local legend, which a lot of those people were actors.
Weren't they
That
all?
were planted. The actors, our three leads, didn't know that.
Really?
They thought they didn't know that they were plants.
Now
because
that's pretty cool.
because they thought that they knew they were making a movie. They knew all the stuff that was going to happen is fake, but they thought it was based off of a real legend. They didn't realize that they just made up this whole legend. They made up all of it, whole cloth. So they'd plant actors to talk about the Blair Witch.
It's a great idea.
It is a really good idea, because you would always have that in the back of your mind. Like if you really didn't know that this was like a completely fabricated thing, it would always be a little bit in the back of your mind. Like, I talked to local people; they think that this is a real thing.
Yeah, and I don't know if all the actors thought that, but Heather Donahue definitely did. I mean, she was interviewed. She said in an interview that she didn't know that it was a made up, like that the story was made up until after the premiere. She's like, "What? What? I thought the myth was real." But it's like, no, it's fake. So in order for the hype to have worked, the actors also had to play ball. So they had to basically
low.
hide from the limelight and not grant any interviews for a while, which would be really hard to do when you're in the biggest movie of the year, right?
Mm.
It's like, oh, don't go and get your flowers, you know?
Right. And especially because, like, how many people do they know? Like, every single one of those people that know who those people are would be like,
Yeah.
no, that's not so and so. That's,
Yeah.
that's
Which-
just
Well, yesterday, Taco Bell.
which
Yeah.
that's why it would never work today. You see,
Yeah,
because we have
yeah.
would kill
we
it.
have
Social media.
social media and we have phones. We have cameras in our pockets.
Yeah.
Right. In 1999, we didn't have either of those.
Yeah.
If you wanted to take a picture, you had to have a camera.
Yeah. And that really, like, when I was watching this and that scene that Derek was talking about, that he says, like, I see why you keep filming, because this is like altering reality and it makes you feel like you're not like really out here, like, and this isn't really happening. And like that thought coming out in this movie before social media was like a thing.
Mhm.
And like now everybody is constantly looking through the lens of a camera, like, for every single thing that we do, basically. And that just the idea of that is like terrifying, that like we are all looking at an altered reality every day.
To a degree, but you know what they say, the camera doesn't lie. You find truth. That's why movies are coming. You find truth in film. So so we get this great setup, and then we're in the woods. Like I said, it's hard to just go scene by scene because it's them yelling at each other. By the way, you guys, did you watch this on Freevee?
I think so.
I watched it on Plex.
Okay, I watched it on Freevee, and I had the subtitles on. Did you have the
did not.
subtitles on?
No.
It was hilarious. The subtitles were just on anyway, because whatever we watched last on Amazon, it was on. But the subtitles, except for the word hell and maybe damn, censored all of the curse words.
Nice.
Oh my god.
So either they just wouldn't say them. Like, so if they're like, where's the fucking camera? They'd say, the subtitles would just say, where's the camera? Right? But my absolute favorite of all time is Mike. I think it's Mike. He walks off and he says, "This is fucking bullshit." And the subtitle said, "Oh boy." I laughed so hard. I was like, "That's amazing."
It reminds me of that scene from.
He thought he was Sam Beckett.
Oh boy.
It reminds me of that scene from Speed. You know,
oh yeah. Oh boy. Yeah, it reminds me of Dr. Sam Beckett.
That's hilarious. Yeah, that too.
So the map kicking scene where he kicks the map into the creek, the river, and then when he announces it later, right? What they did there is when he got his note, it said, "You need to lose the map. Purposely, you need to lose the map, and then you need to hold off on that information until it's right to reveal it." So he kicked the map into the water. He thought that they had seen him do it. He was hoping that they didn't. The actors. He was hoping the other actors didn't see him. They didn't. So their reaction to him being pissed off was them in character, but the shock of it was because that was the first time they were hearing that he lost the map. They didn't know he did.
Wow.
Till that bit.
That's great. I mean, and that is 100% like why you would do it this way, why you would film this way. And that's great. I'm glad that you told us that.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So once the scares start happening, and I use this word scares, it's more like just happenstances, and they find the aftermath in the next morning. Once those happen, when we find out that Mike is gone, and we see the little wood, sticks, the tube of sticks.
Oh yeah.
When they shot that, so you know how she takes it and she sees it wrapped up with this thing, and she's like, "I'm just going to throw it away from the tent," and she throws it away. The actress Heather did that because that was like what she thought her character would do. She threw it away.
Yeah.
And then the production designer was watching. He was the one watching the filming of it, and because they were keeping track of it, they were watching it from afar, and he had to communicate with the directors hey, she didn't even open it because they put the teeth were a couple of teeth from the dentist. And then the tongue was fake, and obviously, but the hair was the actor's actual hair. And so they had it wrapped up. They wanted their reaction to it. And she didn't open it. She just threw it away. So the directors had to come in and be like, hey, we need you to go back and shoot your reaction to actually opening that thing. And she's like, oh, okay. So then she had to reshoot the whole bit of her actual. That's why she throws it away, then decides to go back and open it because it kind of doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
That's because she just didn't. And then they're like, hey, we need you. We put a lot of work in. All her budget was this fake tongue.
Yeah, no kidding. And the teeth from the dentist.
Teeth from the dentist. So when she sees that's how that happened.
That's cool.
It also looked like. Go ahead, Lydia.
I wonder if that was written down, he needed to sneak out in the middle of the night while they were sleeping.
I think it was, yeah. Or they might have known that he was not going to be there. I don't know how that worked out.
Yeah.
But
I just wonder about all of that. That would be
Yeah.
so fun to be behind the scenes of this.
Yeah.
And also not fun.
Yeah.
Also, I think that they had used his shirt, it looked like.
They did, to wrap it.
That's why I figured that she went back because she was like, well, that looked like his shirt, so maybe I should
Yeah, and in story, that probably makes sense. But the real reason was because she just didn't. She
was
didn't
like,
do it
I'm going to get rid of this.
I'm getting rid of this. No, we need you. We put a lot of work into that.
Yeah.
It's not a bundle of sticks or something inside. But what do you guys think of that bit in story?
I thought it was okay.
Yeah, like most of the movie. It's okay.
Yeah. I was definitely like, ew.
Yeah. Ew. Turned into ew.
Derek, you're muted.
No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't.
My God, you can only go 1 week.
No, Lydia, I was not muted.
Derek,
I,
you were muted.
I was adjusting my seat, and I was like, oh, my bad.
Disappointing. So, what were you going to say, Derek, before you muted yourself and fucked up your streak?
I'm so mad at you, Lydia. No, I'm not mad at you at all. What I was going to say was, I do feel like it worked. It played, I think, well for the situation that they were in. So, I mean, you're assuming that this is, what is playing out in this movie scenario. It played well. It worked.
Yeah, I do. I was grossed out, and I really liked her reaction afterwards. She seemed genuinely freaked out and did not want to talk about it, I thought that was cool.
Her reaction when she sees it is a little much. She's
she's hyperventilating.
Right.
Shit.
Sarah was like, what the hell is going on? She's laying on the couch watching it. She's on her phone. She's like, that's annoying.
Yeah.
I was like, babe, she's really scared. What do you want?
Yeah, that's how it sounds when people are scared, usually.
Or having sex.
That's the other thing I was going to say. Yep.
Or you're Miles Dyson at the end of Terminator 2. You're talking about?
I do. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
You're off the C4?
I don't know how much longer I can hold it.
T2 is fucking great, guys. We should have just been talking about that movie this whole time.
8 times, man. I went to the movie 8 times. Now, this was back when a movie ticket was like $1.25.
You saw Terminator 2 8 times in the theater?
8 times in the movie theater.
Dude, I don't blame you. I wish I would have saw that in the theater. That movie fucking slaps. Man.
Back to this movie.
Back to this one. So, yeah, then we get into the end game of this movie. What do you guys think of the ending of this thing?
That was really loud. I didn't mean for it to be that loud.
Wow.
I feel like it came full circle. because there was a bit in the beginning when they were talking, they were doing the interviews, and one of the guys described what would happen in the basement, where the witch would make
Right.
one of the boys go stand in the corner and watch while the other one got killed or what have you. Which that scene totally plays out, and I liked the way that when they found the house and they're like roaming around this house and they're going upstairs and you hear the other guy, Josh, I think, calling for him, and they eventually make it down to the basement, and it's just so discombobulated once they get down there. I think it played pretty well.
What do you think, Lydia?
Yeah. I don't know. It's like I have to admit that I really enjoyed watching this, but this ending is like, what can you even say about it? I don't even know what to say. It's like, I don't hate it, but it's really not that scary.
Yeah, it's definitely not scary.
It's
I
not
would
scary
agree.
for sure.
It's supposed to
It's kind of more interesting.
Yeah, it's supposed to psychologically. I remember my first reaction watching this movie, because I'm watching it, and like I said, I was like, "Oh, this is okay. This is interesting. I'm into this story. I'm watching it."
Mm-hmm.
And then the ending happened, and I was just kind of like. Then the credits came up, and I was like,
"You're like literally
right.
Nothing. Nothing. They didn't.
I thought we were going to see something. I thought we were going to at least like when the camera falls, that we're going to see like somebody walk in front of it or something.
Something.
Instead, it just you're just like, all right, quite the climax. That's how I felt. Kind of anti-climax is what. Was. You're right, Derek. It does come full circle, and they do explain it earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Which I didn't catch the first time that I watched it. I've only watched this movie like 3 times.
It's just not visually interesting what happens. It's not dynamic. That's the word we're looking for.
It's not dynamic.
And it's supposed to be quiet and scary, but I don't know if it quite lands.
A found footage scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is
what it is. It's
fine. Like I said, it's okay. It's kind of how I feel about the whole movie. It's fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is the Blair Witch Project. Of course, another interesting part about it is the old stick figure guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were very popular for a while there.
Mm-hmm.
I remember walking in woods and I would see one, like for the next 2-3 years. You'd find these stick figure guys hanging out. Yep. Somebody created their own little Blair Witch guys.
Yeah, I remember making them myself.
Yeah. Do you guys ever walk in the woods and see them just randomly?
Man, I mean,
probably.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was like, if I did, it was because I probably had already made them.
I remember doing it. Like, I remember walking in the woods by Hookman's back in the day. And they were up in the trees.
Yeah, I have more private woods that I roam.
Yeah.
So if it was in there, I would have been really freaked out.
Yeah.
So I can't remember if it was with you or if it was with Joey, but we went to the Hookman Woods and we saw some of those things. It had to be with Joey. So we decided that we were going to make a giant crucifix and we hung it up. That's how we rolled.
Why? You don't even believe.
I don't, but
Did you make it out of sticks or did you make it?
Yeah, no, really big limbs. We made a giant crucifix.
Nice.
And then strung it up.
That is pretty freaky.
That's hilarious. That's pretty funny. Yeah, I would see them in the woods as I'm, like I said, back behind Hookman's and stuff like that. I'd see
down by the river.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Yeah,
which I have a camping story I'll talk about when we get into story time. But what do you guys think of the Blair Witch Project? Anything else you want to talk about? Anything we missed?
I'm sure there's something we missed.
Well, there's a lot of fuck words. I think it was 100 and some fuck words in the movie. About a typical conversation from us.
Yeah.
For sure.
You guys, what are you guys' thoughts?
Are we rating?
You can rate, yeah.
I don't know
You-
what
you
to
wanna
rate
rate?
this movie.
I will go
Honestly, either.
first. I will go first.
He said me either.
That'll be our barometer. of where we're
Yeah.
at.
We'll go
Okay.
based on what Derek thinks.
Probably much lower.
So I'm going to. I want to give this movie 2 grades. Okay, I want to give this movie a grade for when it came out, and I want to give this movie a grade for like what it is
Now.
today.
Yeah.
Right. If you watched the movie that somebody came out with, and this was it, this movie is probably a 4. You know, for sure, in my opinion. Now, for the history of what this movie did for that genre, and when it came out, and just like everything that we talked about in the beginning of this movie, I would probably rate it about a 6.5 or a 7, just because of how many people believe that this happened.
Yeah, well, that's the marketing. That's the marketing.
100%, and that makes all the difference. Cloverfield actually comes to mind when we talk about like super creative.
Paranormal Activity.
Paranormal Activity was another one. Now, when that one came along, I feel like you knew what it was because of something like the Blair Witch. But yeah. So I see this movie through kind of 2 lenses, and mainly because I lived through the first one. I was 16 years old, so I've got a really good recollection of what that all looked like back then. And so yeah.
So what's your like rating of the movie itself now? That way we can give you we can get a rating put on it for you.
I don't know if it's a 4 now and it was a 7 then. I'm going to split the difference right down the middle. What is that? 4.
I knew he was going to do the
11.
actual math. Instead of just
5.5.
Yeah, I was going to say, instead we would have just been like a 5 or a 6. But he's like,
Yeah.
allow me to calculate.
Yeah.
I'm going to give it a 5.
I must manipulate the data.
That's mean.
What do you have?
I think I'm gonna at least give it a full point up from that. I think I'm gonna go with the 6.5 because I really had a good time watching this. I don't know. I guess maybe I always forget how big of a fan I am of like found footage stuff. Like I don't know why, but I just really like it's just a cozy vibe for me to just watch people running through the woods, and their acting is genuinely realistic and good to me. Like I was in it. I really was genuinely in it. I was like, this is real. This is happening. And I've seen this movie plenty of times now and I don't know. Yeah, I guess just my enjoyment of watching it for, I don't know, maybe the 5th time in my life that I probably enjoyed this watch more than any of the first ones, I don't know why. Maybe I was just in a good mood today.
Yeah, so it's hard to rate it because, like you said, Derek, the innovation of the way they shot it and how it captured the zeitgeist and all that stuff is very, very important and very, very cool and very unique. But I've got a confession to make. I've never found this movie scary or all that great. Like, I think it's really cool, the stuff that they did. And I like some of the scenes. It's kind of them walking around in the woods in a circle with the camera.
Okay, wait. I have a confession to make. I teared up. During this movie.
Derek said muted. He said this watch. But
This
you didn't
watch.
hear him because he was fucking muted.
During this
Well,
watch,
I
I
already
just watched
know it,
this
so it doesn't matter.
a couple hours ago. I just watched this and I genuinely was so in it that I teared up.
Why did you tear?
When she is filming her snotty
Oh
sorry
my God.
into the camera, I teared up.
I'm gonna
guys.
be honest.
Good for you,
I'm gonna be honest. I teared up at at trying to focus on a fucking object in this movie. My eyes teared up from trying to focus on an object.
Oh,
I'm
damn
gonna
it.
give this movie a 5.5 as well, Derek. I was going in gonna give it a 6 or a 6.5 just because of everything. Derek gave me the strength to be honest and give this thing a fucking 5.5. I almost
Guys,
wanted to give it a 5.
Guys,
Because here's my, you said that you have like this love of found footage. My secret is I fucking kind of hate found footage
yeah.
because I like to see the frame. I spend a lot of time setting up a shot to see what's in that frame. This is what I want the audience to see. And then it's like,
Yeah. I always thought I hated found
it's
footage,
just
but
not about it.
every found footage movie that I watch, I'm always like, I like that. I like that movie.
I like some. So when we get into Paranormal Activity, we'll talk about that because
Yes.
it's a found footage movie that's properly framed. Right?
Yes, good point.
So, Derek, you were just making up for last week in all sorts of ways.
Derek, were you talking that whole time?
On our last whole confession, Derek was
He's spilling all of his deepest, darkest
What I
confessions.
was saying was the reason why that one is so proper is it was filmed in a house with tripods and security.
Absolutely.
cameras.
Yeah. Yeah.
Technology. Had
Well,
advanced.
Yeah, I mean, situational. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, and again, that's what works for this movie. It's not
Mhm.
not saying it's bad. It's just not my
Your
cup of
pet
tea.
peeves, yeah.
Not my
You know
cup of
what?
tea.
When Derek said that he was 16 when this came out, I was like, I wonder if I was like 16 when Paranormal Activity came out.
You might have been.
I might have, probably was around there.
Yeah. We'll talk about that one too. Oh, also, just on a side note, we were talking about Terminator 2 earlier, remember?
Mhm.
It made, by the way, it was made for $94 million. So quite a
How
lot
much?
more. $94 million is how much it was made. But it made $420 million in 1991.
They still had a better rate of return.
Well, yeah,
I
but
mean, it's hard to beat something for.
that's a lot
like that.
of that's a lot of people seeing Terminator 2 in the theater.
It
Oh,
was
yeah.
all
Derek was 8 of those times.
8 of them at $1.25 a pop.
See, he
every Derek in every town
Yep.
in the world.
Terminator 2. What's that? I wonder what that. I'm gonna check that real fast. See what the inflation calculator says about how much that was. Let's check it out. So 1991, it was 520 million buckaroos. 000,000. And it doesn't tell me because this freaking thing sucks.
What?
All right.
What year was it?
1991. Here's the better one.
That's when Terminator 2 came out?
Yes. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, because I was like 8. Oh my gosh.
So that's basically over $1 billion nowadays.
Mhm.
So it was a huge hit. That's crazy. And that is Paranormal Activity. I'm just kidding. It was Blair Witch Project.
Flash Terminator 2.
Flash Terminator 2. No, that was the Blair Witch Project. So
Are we even going to
Guys.
try?
we have to.
Thrill me.
Which one of these fuckers would Tom Atkins play? Probably the one that lived longest, right?
I don't know. He was kind of a dick.
Maybe
He
one of the
was.
fishermen.
He could play the fisherman at the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no cops in this movie otherwise.
Yeah.
There's an old man. and
Well,
then
I can tell
there's
you this.
Fishermen, old men.
I can tell you this much. If Tom Atkins was sleeping in a tent with a woman, she would not be sleeping in her own sleeping bag.
Mm-hmm.
That would be totally unrealistic, right?
Right. Yeah, that would never.
Never
Although
fly.
she does get kind of cuddly with the guy when he's having like a mental breakdown. You know,
He needs
Yeah,
a
but
shoulder. Mike.
they might have shut
Yeah,
off the cameras. We don't know what happened out there.
I guess that's true. This isn't a Big Brother situation where they're just filming it the whole time.
And they were
All
talking
right.
about orgies for a second. So
Yeah, they were. They were. That hotel scene. So the longest thing they filmed, by the way, is that hotel scene that the actors filmed.
Mm-hmm.
That scene itself was 95 minutes long.
well,
So this movie was filmed in 8 days. Okay? Movie was filmed in 8 days and took 8 months to edit.
dang,
Jesus Christ. A long time.
I mean, yeah, kind of
good
a little
though.
long, but it would be because
Of all
They
the
had
footage
just-
they had, yeah.
hours and hours of footage,
Yeah.
and they had to whittle a coherent story out of it, you know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And apparently there's a lot of cut footage because they had it to where Josh was more friendly with Heather. And that's what the concept was going to be, is like that one of them was going to be more friendly with her. The other one was going to be antagonistic. But they cut it because what ended up happening was, in character, they both were attacking her, and they felt like they were bullying the woman. Felt like they were teaming up on the woman, and they didn't like that. So they edited it in a way where, you know, Josh got to be was the peacemaker. Mike was antagonistic towards her, and Heather was like kind of like Captain Ahab. She was filming her movie, going after her thing.
Yeah, I did like that. And I liked how, like, in the end, it's kind of neutral too, because they all kind of end on good like better terms. And they
Yeah.
when they get mad at each other and then they try to like make up, and then
They kind of do make up right before Mike disappears, because he was a real big dick right before that.
yeah. But they're all so stressed out, like,
Yeah.
you know,
Haven't
you can't
eaten.
even blame anybody because
Yeah.
everybody's starving and like lost.
So here's another interesting thing that the directors did, is that they, towards the end of the shoot, so when it was just Josh and Heather left, they started dwindling the food down that they would give them for their lunches each time. So by the end of the shoot, they were only getting like a protein bar, piece of fruit, and water for the day. So that way the tensions would be higher and they'd be crankier, which is a good way to get me cranky, I can tell you.
Oh
You
man,
don't feed me.
Yeah.
You don't feed me, I get hangry. So I turn into Joe Pesci, and they're like, "You're not yourself. Grab a Snickers."
Oh boy.
So guys, next week is going to be a bit different. This is normally where I would pick the movie that we're watching, right? That's what we do here. So next week, instead of doing a movie like normal, we are going to have our first special guest, and we are going to speak with the star of our short film, Secret Admirer, Vandy Enzor, and she is going to discuss with us as we kind of go over and talk about behind the scenes stuff of Secret Admirer.
Yay.
So that's going to be a lot of fun. So that means all you guys need to watch Secret Admirer before next week. So that way you can know what we're talking about when we talk about all the behind the scenes. We're going to talk about the writing process. We're going to talk about the casting process. We're going to talk about filming. And Vandy's going to talk to us about how she started in acting, what projects she has going on. And we will be announcing the next project, which, if you haven't guessed yet, may be related to Secret Admirer, right?
For sure.
Just saying,
It's
maybe.
gonna be a selfless plug.
It's going to be a shameless plug, but it's going to be a lot of fun, right?
Yeah.
You guys excited for next week?
Oh yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see Vandy.
Yes,
Yeah.
it would be great to see Vandy. It's going to be great to talk about us doing what we did. So that's look forward for that next week. Now, this is the part of the show where Derek tells us a story if he has one. Derek, you got a story?
No, I didn't think
You
of
have
one.
a spooky Blair
I
Witch
have a story.
in the woods
So I was going
story.
to
Go
I have a
for it.
story. I was going to tell you. So we were talking earlier. Derek talked about his, walk home from the movies, and then we talked a little bit about the woods, right? Well, I remember this time when I was young. We went camping out by I don't remember where it was, but we were towards a river, of course, because we were fishing. So we were on a body of water. We're out in the woods, and we started hearing stuff in the woods. So we went to investigate. And I remember all of us walking over to this place, and we see this structure in the woods. It had a flat, stone, almost like a stone bench in front. It kind of resembled an altar. Had this flat stone area. And then there was this structure that looked like it had a pentagram on the top of it. It was like a 5-pointed star in the night. And this freaked us out. I remember because all we had is our flashlights. And we're like, oh my God. Oh. And I'm young. I'm like 10. We're like, ah! Oh my God. And I remember us running back to the thing. And we were debating on leaving. We're like, no, it's probably fine. We'll just have somebody stay up, blah, blah. So we went to bed. The next day we went in the daylight to check out this scary structure we saw. And we get there, and it was definitely a bench, and it was like a fucking shed. It was a shed, this old shed that was nothing. If there's nothing else, for Derek Lemaster and Lydia Judy, I'm Jamie Hiles. And remember, guys, if you're gonna scream bloody movies.